Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Melanson, Joseph Keith Melanson. I am here in Washington, D.C., and I'm so happy to be here with another episode of Kidney Talks. And for anyone who's been here before, you know I'm coming from George Washington University here in D.C., and we're normally here with Reverend Curry from the Pennsylvania Avenue Baptist Church. Reverend Curry's not here today, but we are here with the great Dr. Clive Callender from Washington, D.C., from Howard University, and from MOTEP, Minority Organ Tissue and Transplant Education Program. So we're going to have a great show. I think that this is the sort of show that people ask for quite frequently, because we're going to be tackling these sorts of questions that I get literally all the time. So we're going to be delving into kidney disease. You know, what causes kidney disease? How do you know you have kidney disease? Things of that nature. So I'm here. We have a legend, Dr. Callender, who's here. That's going to be answering your questions. So we're going to get started in just a little bit. But Dr. Callender, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be with you again. Looking forward to answer the questions that they have, and perhaps even others that they didn't have.
Okay. All righty. Well, Asia, we will get started. So why don't you get the slides up, and then we'll answer them. So yeah, as I promised, that's the title for this talk. Frequently asked questions. So next slide. Yeah, it's a good one, right? What is kidney disease? What do your kidneys do? And I think, as far as the surprising part of what the kidneys do, the surprising part is that the kidneys do more than filter, right? I think that people recognize the fact that there are two big pumps in your body. Your heart is one of the pumps, and the kidney is a pump, so to speak. And there are two organs that do a lot of filtering. Your liver does a lot of filtering, and your kidney does a lot of filtering. But I think the surprising part is that the kidneys do more than filter. They do more than be a passive pump, so to speak. They also are very important in producing hormones that regulate your blood pressure, and producing hormones that are important in you having enough blood in your body. New blood is produced by your bone marrow, but only prodded by erythropoietin that comes from the kidney. So one of the things that the kidney does is makes you manufacture enough red cells. That's one thing. And then, like I said, the other thing it does is it helps to modulate your blood pressure, and it's very important for calcium levels in the blood. If your kidneys are not functioning well, there are various electrolyte things that will happen as a result of you not having good kidney function. So the kidney does more than work as a pump, or more than work as a filter. But its major function is taking all of the waste that go into your body and enabling it to be urinated out. One of the things that happens in your body every day is that there are lots and lots of waste that is collected. And the waste is not just from eating. You get a lot of waste in just metabolizing the cells of your body. So the way to look at kidney function is just to look at how well the kidneys are metabolizing even the waste that your body produces every day, as well as the waste that come from eating and drinking various foods, and drinking various liquids. So your kidney is this very important pump and filter device. And kidney disease is when it's not functioning correctly. So when your kidneys are not functioning correctly, you then have kidney disease. Now, there are 5 stages of kidney disease, and it's only when you get all the way at the end of the kidney disease do you get what's called end stage kidney disease. But you have When you have early kidney disease, that is called CKD, chronic kidney disease. And so stage 1 through 4 is chronic kidney disease, and late stage 4 into stage 5 is end stage kidney disease. But like I said, I can respond to questions later to go into more detail. Next slide. Now, is kidney disease common? And unfortunately, the answer is yes. Kidney disease is very, very common. There are millions of people in the United States who have kidney disease. If you look at it in regards to expenditures by the federal government, right now there's a lot of controversy about spending for medical care, particularly through Medicare and Medicaid funding. And about 20% of the money that is spent for healthcare through Medicare funding is spent for kidney disease. So kidney disease is quite common, and it is more common in certain groups than others. But if you just look at the United States as a whole, almost 10% of people have some form of kidney dysfunction. Now, when you separate us out by groups, African Americans, people of African ancestry, have the most kidney disease. People like us have 3 to 4 times the kidney disease of the average American or the average white American. So African Americans have more kidney disease, much more. We have the most kidney disease of any group of people in the country, followed by Native Americans. Native Americans also have more than twice the amount of kidney disease compared to Caucasians, and followed by Hispanic Americans and then Asian Americans. So all of these ethnic groups have more kidney disease than white patients, but African Americans have the most. So for us, average is more like 15%. 15% of us in this country are going to have some form of kidney dysfunction. So with it being so common, it's something that should be very carefully investigated for the normal patient when they go to see their primary care doctor. And I can tell you, it's never more of an issue as it is now, how frustrating it is for someone that's involved in kidney care to see the fact that it's ignored a lot in the medical profession. So it's something that you have to be aware of, and you have to make it a point to push for your primary care doctor or your nurse practitioner, whoever sees you on a regular basis, to give you an update about your level of kidney function. People get very upset sometimes. I talk to lots of patients, and they're upset to find out that they have kidney disease and that their doctors never talked about it or never gave them a warning that they were heading towards worsening kidney problems. I, as well as Dr. Callender, we're both transplant surgeons. So we treat people at the end, right? Once you have end-stage renal disease is when we treat you. And it's not uncommon for us to meet people all the way at the end. Their kidneys are failing, and they're just finding out that they have kidney disease, although they go to doctors, regularly. So kidney disease is very common, and it has become more common over time, and it's becoming more common because the problems that cause kidney disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, high salt diet, eating lots of preservatives, eating lots of red meat. These sorts of things, unfortunately, are worsening in this country. Next slide. How can I avoid kidney disease, and how can I avoid the progression of kidney disease? These are two great questions. And Dr. Callender spent his career trying to get people to be healthy. And so the answer is to live a healthy lifestyle. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I always like to use examples from my own life. Just this morning, I go to this breakfast place here in DC after I work out in the mornings. And invariably, I go there and I'm not going to say I'm the healthiest person, but I try to eat healthy. I always get Perrier water, which I love, and fruit, and then I sometimes I'll have a sandwich. I tend to try to eat more fish or seafood, but sometimes I'll have a turkey sandwich. But most of the people there will be ordering breakfast foods, and so I see people eating a lot of bacon, a lot of ham, and a lot of eggs. Eggs are not necessarily unhealthy, but eggs with a lot of cheese. And this is it. Just becomes like almost like breathing air. You're so used to, your culture has taught you this is what you eat for breakfast. This is okay to eat these sorts of sausages and processed foods and things of that nature. And I'm telling you, this is exactly the problem. So how can I avoid kidney disease? Well, you have to live a healthier life. All of us should be doing some exercise 3 to 4 times a week. That's number one. We should. Most people do not drink enough water, right? You have to drink a lot of water. That's like 8 to 10 glasses, standard glasses of water a day, right? Water, right? And dark sodas should be avoided. I look. I've been like I said, I'm not immune to this, and I for some reason I'm one of those people that I do like Diet Cokes. Now I rarely drink Diet Coke now, but it's something that I used to love. But dark sodas are bad. They should be avoided. So by being healthier, you want to drink a lot more water. You want to eat a lot more fruit. You want to eat a lot more vegetables. You want to avoid red meat. I mean, things that you've heard before. That's why I kind of snicker, is that the stuff we should do, people say it all the time. It's just that we don't listen, right? We're always looking for that magic pill or that magic thing to do, because the stuff that we know we should be doing, we don't want to do, right? So, trying to get sugar out of the diet, trying to get salt out of the diet, trying to get preservatives out of the diet, all these things are things that we hear all the time, but that's exactly what we should do. One of the things I do, again, using me as an example, I go to restaurants, and the healthiest people on the planet, if you look around the globe, are like Asians, right? But what do Asians eat? I'm not talking about what are Asian foods in America. I'm saying, what do Asians themselves eat? The healthy Asians, right? Because there are different types of Asians, but I'm talking about people that are thin and don't have a lot of heart disease or cancer. They do eat a lot of rice, but they eat a lot of vegetables, right? They don't sit there and eat a lot of red meat and pork and whatever. They may eat some pork. I know that in Asia they eat a lot of pork, but what I'm saying is they eat a lot of vegetables and rice, right? They do not eat a lot of meat, right? And they drink a lot of water. So what can I do to avoid kidney disease? You need to be healthy. And what can I do to avoid the progression of kidney disease? It's the same answer, but usually once you have some degree of kidney disease, you know what the etiology is. In other words, the cause. And the cause usually is high blood vessels or vascular disease, right? That's what causes kidney disease, causes vascular disease. So what you need to make sure is that your high blood pressure that caused your disease definitely, absolutely should be treated, right? Now, again, I've said this on the show before, that when we go out to test people's blood pressure, the people with the highest blood pressure already know they have high blood pressure. They already have a doctor, and they're usually already on medicine, and their blood pressure is still high. So being treated for high blood pressure means that your blood pressure needs to be in the normal range. Again, we love to quiz patients and ask them, hey, what's a normal blood pressure? And invariably, people don't know, right? Normal blood pressure means that top number is not above 130, right? So it should never be above 130. It really should be like 120, right? So the top number should be like 120. So somewhere between 100 and 120, 125, that top number should be there, and it should not be higher. If it's higher, you still have high blood pressure. And the bottom number should not be above 80, right? So that means it should be 70, 60, 50. It should be low, right? So a normal blood pressure is going to be 115 over 70. That's a normal blood pressure. If your blood pressure normally runs 145 over 90, which, I see people all the time and they think, yeah, no, it's fine. Oh, that's good for me. No, that's not good for you. No. That's high blood pressure, right? And you'll say, oh, no, my doctor says that's good for me. Your doctor is wrong. That's a good blood pressure. Your blood pressure needs to be normal. And here's the sad truth. Once you have high blood pressure, the damage has already started. So it's even more important that you have normal blood pressure. Now, I get it. Some people have had high blood pressure for so long that they will have problems when you get their blood pressure into normal range because they've developed other issues. So I am exempting them from this point. But overall, for us patients, we need to have normal blood pressure. And that's how you avoid the progression if blood pressure is part of the reason. And it usually is. And then same thing with diabetes. What is a normal blood glucose? A normal blood glucose should never get above 100, 110, right? If your glucose jumps above that, then that's not normal. It means you have some kind of pre-diabetes, diabetes. That's not normal, right? So you've got to get your blood glucose in a normal range. So what the doctor will do is they'll get what's called a hemoglobin A1C, right? A hemoglobin A1C should be in the normal range. If it's high, that means that your blood glucose at times jumps up above where it should be. But a normal hemoglobin A1C is going to be like 5.5, right? And so if it's above 6, that tells you that you're pre-diabetic. You're diabetic. Your blood glucose is too high. What's the most common way to fix new onset of pre-diabetes? Losing weight, exercising, losing weight. It's the same stuff, right? We just keep saying the same stuff over and over. It's just that people don't want to hear us, right? They want to hear what can I take? What herb? What herbal medicine can I start taking? What can I take to keep my? People always want to know. They want to know what's the magic. I need some magic. No, you need to go walking. You need to drink a lot of water. You need to stop eating junk. Next slide. What is creatinine? What is GFR, eGFR, estimated glomerular filtration rate, and what is race-based eGFR? These are great questions. Yeah, thanks for sending these in. So, all right, the first one, what is creatinine? So creatinine is the breakdown product of protein. So as your body breaks down protein, it turns into creatinine, right? And that is what your kidneys will urinate out. So when your kidneys are functioning normally, what happens is the creatinine will go into a certain range, right? So a good creatinine is typically like 1.0, right? So that means that all that protein in your body, when you are urinating like you should, it's being expelled from your body at the right rate. And if it's not, then the creatinine starts to increase. And when it starts to increase, then your GFR, which is it's a formula that calculates how fast your body is excreting creatinine. So that's why they are related. So your glomerular filtration rate is estimated by how well your body excretes creatinine. Okay, so if you have a normal creatinine, your GFR is going to be good. So, like I said, if your creatinine, let's just say 1.0, and for a normal size American, that means that your GFR is going to be greater than 90. And 90 is a good GFR. That's normal, right? So what you want is to have a GFR that's greater than 90 and a creatinine that's around 1 or less than 1. That's the normal range. Okay. Now, what is race-based GFR? So years ago, again, if you go back into the times of colonialism and exploration, of the world by Europe, all these European countries were exploring and discovering. They discovered everything. How can you discover something when people are there? But I don't, but so as they were discovering everything, they also were there was this idea of of study, of exploring science, and so there were lots of European scientists who went to Africa and they saw the difference, like the physical differences between some of these Africans and non-Africans. And one of the things, like when I was in medical school at Tulane, there used to be this anatomical museum, and there was this tribe in Africa. I mean, where the men were all like 6'4" or taller, and they were very muscular, large men. And so these European scientists were just enthralled by these gigantic black Africans, and they wanted to find out, did their bodies work in the same way? And it took them some time, but they realized that, yeah, humans are humans, but there might be some differences. And one of the things that they wondered about was the kidneys, because since particularly these tribes that they studied, the men in particular had so much more muscle, their kidneys must be more facile at excreting the muscular breakdown products. So that's when it's through those machinations that these European scientists started to think, well, GFR must mean something differently for these Africans than your standard European. And that's where these differences started to take place. It's all about that the average African, West African male had more muscle, therefore, the kidneys had to be more facile at excreting the breakdown products of muscle. And that's where you start to get this race with GFR. And so that's where this was programmed into computers, even into the 21st century. And just recently, that because of controversy, that's been changed. But why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because it meant that African Americans, since their kidneys were presumed to be functioning better than your average white person, it meant that things that are reserved for people with kidney disease, they would receive later. And most pronounced of those things would be kidney transplant, because um, kidney transplant is life saving for people with kidney disease. Some African Americans actually died because their kidneys were presumed to be working better simply because they were black. So now in the transplant community, we have race neutral GFR in order to stop discriminating against black patients. But this is where this stuff comes from. And that's what I try to explain to people when I'm out in the community. But again, if you want to ask questions, I can go into more detail. Next slide. What are the first signs of kidney disease? Well, this actually can change based on the patient, but I'll just give you the most common. And because again, the early kidney disease, there really are no signs, right? That's the problem. There are really no signs or symptoms of kidney disease when you are stage 1, stage 2, even stage 3. It's not until you start to get into stage 4 and 5 that you have signs. Now, you may have blood work when you're in stage 2 or 3 that your healthcare provider will recognize as problematic, or you might have um, they may your doctor may be having trouble treating your high blood pressure and come to the conclusion that you have kidney disease, which is also contributing to your high blood pressure. But insofar as what we typically think of as symptoms, you don't really have symptoms like a headache or itching or any of the things that can you will start to have when you're further along with kidney disease. But one of the most common signs is you start to have swelling, right? So and because water will go in a dependent fashion, people will typically start to notice that they have swelling around their ankles, right, or in their legs at some point. That can be a sign of kidney disease. You may notice that you are more easily fatigued. Okay, and that goes back. Remember what I said about how your kidneys are so instrumental in your body creating enough blood? Well, if your kidneys are not functioning well, you tend to become anemic. And a sign of severe anemia is exercise intolerance. So you get out of breath when you try to go up a couple of flights of stairs. You just don't have the wherewithal to do exercise. You sleep a lot more. You have a lot more fatigue. So that is a sign of kidney disease. You may start to have trouble breathing, right? Because some of the fluid is actually seeping into your lungs. So that's another sign. You start to have dry, flaky skin, right? People with kidney disease, because they're holding on to more of these toxins, and the toxins are killing the skin cells, you start to have flaking skin, and your skin will become dry. For people, for African American people or people of color, your skin will darken, right? So one of the things that people will notice, particularly Black people with kidney disease, is that their skin tone will change. Their skin is not as nice. Not that dark skin is not nice. I mean that your skin is dry and flaky and scaly, and then you also will have darkening of your skin. White people can become more yellowish, not jaundice, just not healthy appearing, right? So these are signs of kidney disease. One of the things that can happen is your appetite changes because you have this weird sort of taste in your mouth, right? And again, that's a buildup of toxins. They People with kidney disease will say they have a metallic taste in their mouth, and so that might decrease their appetite. But most of the symptoms are related to fluid overload. But again, I can go over more of these, but that's usually what people will have. But like I said, the reason why it's called a silent killer is because the most people are developing kidney problems and don't know it. And what happens is all of a sudden, because they were ignoring even when they had symptoms. Because what happens is you're just going through life, right? You're just living your life. You have high blood pressure, it was not treated. Now you have kidney disease, it's not treated. You're starting to have a little bit of swelling. That you're just moving on. You're just doing your thing. And then all of a sudden, one morning you get up and you can't breathe. And then you realize I've got an urgent problem. You go to the emergency room and they take a blood sample, and then the doctor comes back in a panic and says, "Oh my God, you're in kidney failure. Not that you have kidney disease, but you're in kidney failure, and you need urgent dialysis." And I know that sounds horrible, but I can tell you, and I know Dr. Callender can also tell you that we have a lot of patients that this is exactly how they present it, unfortunately. Next slide. When should I see a nephrologist? Well, that's a good question. It's a little bit of a controversial question, but I'll give you my opinion. And my opinion is if you have been diagnosed with kidney problems at all, you should see a nephrologist. Right? So, and if your doctor, so let's say you go to a primary care doctor and your doctor says, "Oh, you have some kidney problem here, and we're just going to watch it." No, right then and there, I would say, no, thank you. Thanks for that advice, doc. But I want to see a kidney doctor. That's what you should do. I don't care if you at stage 1, right? Because you may go to the kidney doctor and the kidney doctor may tell you, well, I think you're fine. I think you're fine to be followed by your primary care doctor. Well, then that's fine. But go to the specialist. Go to the specialist because let me tell you, moreover than not, there's something that the kidney specialist can do for you that the primary care doctor cannot. Right now, the way insurance works, you need a referral, but you tell your primary care doctor, "I want a referral to a kidney doctor," right? Because that is life or death, right? So you don't want to pussyfoot around with this. You don't want to play games. You want to try to get your kidneys as close to normal as possible. And you, even if you have kidney disease, early kidney disease, you want it to stabilize. I know people that have had stage 3 kidney disease for years, right? But they're under the care of a nephrologist, and everything they do is under the auspices of this doctor looking out for their kidneys. That's what you need, because there are little things that, if you have kidney disease and you don't know any better, can tip you over, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say you have stage 3 kidney disease. You're still healthy. I mean, people with stage 3 kidney disease is still are quite healthy. But let's say for some reason you start taking a non-steroidal, like ibuprofen or Motrin, and you're taking a lot of it because you pulled a muscle in your back, or your back is out of whack or something like that. Well, you can take your stage 3 kidney disease and you can push it to stage 4 or 5, right? Just by that one drug. There are antibiotics that can do the same thing. Infections can do the same thing. You want a specialist watching your kidneys once you get diagnosed with kidney disease, right? And even like when I talk about blood pressure or diabetes, you want to treat your blood pressure problem and your diabetes problem differently based on how good or bad your kidneys are. So you need a specialist making these determinations. And sometimes a primary care doctor doesn't understand this until it's too late. So you need to see a specialist once you get diagnosed. So even early on, you need to be plugged into the type of doctor that treats kidney problems, and that's a nephrologist. Next slide. What are the treatment options for end-stage renal disease? Now, this is a little sad because once you get to end stage, like I said, there are 5 stages, right? So you're at stage 5. So once you get to stage 5, well, then unfortunately, you're at the end of the road. Those kidneys are not going to come back. So unlike what I was saying earlier, when you can stabilize things and reverse things, once you get to end stage kidney disease, there is no point of return. So now you need something different. You need what's called renal replacement therapy. You need something to take the place of the function of your kidneys. And that something is usually dialysis, right? Now, there are different types of dialysis. There's peritoneal dialysis, there's hemodialysis, there's in-center, where you go into a center, there's at-home dialysis. All these types of dialysis will work, right? And a kidney doctor will point you in the right direction. But the other option, other than dialysis for end-stage renal disease, is going to be transplant. And there are different types of transplant. You can either get transplant from a dead person, that's called the deceased donor kidney transplant. That's after you are evaluated, you're put on a wait list, and you have to wait years and years and years, and then you percolate to the top of the list, and you can get a kidney from a dead person. Or you can get a live donor, which is a better option, transplant. And that means someone that either a family member or a friend, a colleague, church member, will donate a kidney for you. I did 2 of them just yesterday. And that is the best option for people that have kidney disease. But that's what happens when you have end-stage renal disease. You're at the end of the train. You're going to die if you don't have a replacement for your kidney function. And you need urgent, sometimes dialysis, and then kidney transplantation. Next slide. Okay, what is dialysis? So dialysis is, it's a machine, and the machine does the filtering for your kidneys. Now, what the kidney doctor will do that's in charge of dialysis is he's going to make sure that you also receive some of the medications that will help your body receive what it's not receiving when your kidneys go into failure. So remember I talked about calcium and how regulation of calcium and phosphorus is so important. Well, the dialysis machine cannot do all of that, but special medicines that the doctor will give you will take care of the metabolism or the movement of those electrolytes in your body. The doctor will also have to give you these special shots of medicine to cause your blood to make more blood cells because your kidney is not doing that any longer. Now, people, the next question is how long can someone be on dialysis? And people can be on dialysis for decades, really. So I've had patients that have survived many, many years on dialysis. I've had patients that I've transplanted after 20 or 30 years on dialysis. So people can stay alive a long time. But unfortunately, dialysis, or at least once you get to the point where you're on dialysis, hastens death. So people don't tend to have a normal life expectancy once they start dialysis. And that's the advantage of transplantation. It's not just that from a lifestyle point of view that you are happier because you don't have to go to dialysis, but you live longer. So that's why transplantation is in many ways superior to dialysis for people who can undergo a surgical operation. But people can be on dialysis for many years. Next slide. What is kidney transplantation? And who's a good candidate for transplant? Well, kidney transplantation means that you're going to get a kidney, and at least now it means coming from a human. In the future, kidneys are going to come from animals. There have been some recent transplants where pig kidneys have been utilized. And I think that these pig kidneys are going to be the future. Now, these are not just normal pigs. These are pigs that have been genetically engineered to be more like humans. So at least their pigs, their kidneys are more like human kidneys. But right now, you need to have a human kidney. That's going to come from a dead person or a live person. And that's an operation. And that's a whole process because there are medications that you have to take for the rest of your life. You have to come into the hospital and have a big operation that lasts for hours. You need to be in the hospital at least a week. And it's a whole new life change. Now, of course, that's what I do. I'm a transplant surgeon. And I think it's a great thing for those that need it. And so I'm definitely a huge advocate. Who is a good candidate? You have to be a good surgical candidate. So you have to have a good, strong heart. You have to have good, strong lungs. You can't be too fat. You have to be a good surgical candidate. Can't have cancer. These are some of the fast rules. But yeah, if you're a good surgical candidate, if you have a donor, then you can get a kidney transplant relatively quickly, within months of meeting the transplant team. And it is the best option for people with end-stage renal disease. But of course, our hope is that most people, even people that have been diagnosed with kidney problems, could be treated medically and not necessitate the requirement of a transplant. Of the people, remember I told you there are millions of people in this country with kidney disease, but only about 100,000 people actually get onto a transplant list, right? So of the people with end-stage renal disease, that's only going to be a fraction. It's only about 20% of the people with end-stage renal disease. So we are very particular as to who we put on the list. And even the people that get onto the list, about 100,000, only about a quarter of them will be transplanted every year. And you're replenishing that every year. So that's why I said, if you're waiting on a dead person's kidney, and given the fact that there's an accelerated death rate, and you're getting more disease while you're sitting on dialysis, most people that are put on the list will never actually receive a transplant. So that's why live donor transplant is so important. Because if you're a good surgical candidate and you have a donor, you will get a transplant. It's like 100% just about. Whereas if you're not, it's a crapshoot. So that's why it's so important. Who's a good candidate? Well, like I said, you have to be a good surgical candidate. The other thing I should mention is, obviously, you cannot have psychiatric problems, or at least severe psychiatric problems, and you have to have a good social situation. We have some patients that come in and they're good surgical candidates, but they're homeless, right? So we have to make sure that we put them in the right social construct to be successful. You have to be able to go to a stable house and have someone help you with your medications and bring you back and forth in clinic. So it's more than just a surgical aspect. Next slide. How do I start the kidney transplant process? Well, that's relatively easy now, and what that means is the first thing to do, if you are at the point where you would need a transplant, is to tell your kidney doctor or you yourself. You can just call the transplant center. in the Washington, D.C. area, I'm at George Washington. You don't need any intermediary. You can just call us up and say, hey, you know what? I have kidney disease. I need an evaluation for transplant. Our coordinators are going to ask you a bunch of questions over the phone just to get the process started, and you would come in. So you don't need a doctor to refer you, but a doctor can refer you. Your dialysis center can refer you. So it all starts with you just wanting it. It's much less complicated than it used to be in the past, but now you can just refer yourself. One of the good things that has happened, and Dr. Callender was a big part of this, is that it used to be that poor people, Black people, ethnic minorities used to have a lot of trouble getting onto transplant lists, and because of that, because of the delays, they would oftentimes die before receiving transplant. So it was important for advocates like Dr. Callender and his kind to force the transplant community to do things a little bit differently to give people better access. And one of the things that happened was that your time on dialysis started to count as wait time for transplant. And that's how you percolate to the top of the list to be transplanted. And that came out of the minority committees at some of these organizations that where you had doctors, many of them of color, not all of them necessarily, but all of them with our interests at heart, pushed for us to have better access. And I wanted to say that because, particularly in this world that we live in today in the United States, there's a war against diversity, inclusion, and things of that nature. And it's only because people have had this in their hearts and said, I'm going to advocate for people that are not getting good access, that we have gotten these things. And I think it's important for us to remember that because, sometimes we think, it's all right, that we get rid of these discriminatory things. This is crazy that Black people want to have, these all these positions. They want to go to Harvard or whatever. No. We got to realize that if it wasn't for people that pushed for us and others, I'm not just saying us, Black people, but whatever your diversity is, that we wouldn't have the access that we have today. Next slide. Yeah, I like that, Dr. Callender, that I ended with something controversial, because, I learned from you. I used to be meek and quiet, and I did not say these controversial things. But, my mentor, Dr. Callender, has taught me it's important to be outspoken because people need outspoken advocates. So thank you, Dr. Callender, for advocating for that. All right, I just want to say a couple of things. Alexander here has given me some of the questions that you guys are asking, so I'm gonna ask Dr. Callender to answer some of these. I'm gonna start with one here. I said some pretty negative things about pork and bacon and ham, but there's a question, Dr. Callender. Is turkey bacon okay? What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question because turkey itself is reasonable. Bacon in general is pork based, and so there is an advantage of turkey bacon over pork bacon, although bacon is not something that we favor. As you mentioned, the plant-based diet or a diet based on plants and vegetables, fruits and vegetables, is what is thought to be associated with longevity and good health. And so if you have the option of doing without bacon at all, fine. But if you want to take bacon and eat it and not pay the price and penalty, turkey bacon is better than pork bacon.
Yeah, you make a great point, and I saw that there's these areas in the country, they call them blue zones, where people live longer and they're healthier, and they tend to be in areas where the majority of the people that live in those areas are more, they eat more vegetables. They're more likely to be vegan or vegetarian. They avoid things like smoking and drinking alcohol, things that you've done your whole life. And those people live a lot longer. I mean, you're a perfect example of that. You're in your late 80s now, and you're quite healthy. And now they're making this connection between Alzheimer's and some of these dementias and poor diet, right? And so we know that this is the way to go. But why do you think that this is so problematic for people to buy this kind, particularly certain populations? Why do you think there's such a pushback, Dr. Gallen?
Well, I to be honest with you, I think that to eat good food is a so that if you're poor and you don't have a lot of money, if you eat meat at all, you're going to use most of your budget. And so the wisest thing is to try to eat more fruits and vegetables, less meat, and recognize that there are what they call food islands, which means that the places that you can go to get food are like McDonald's and all the other fast food shops, which have more processed foods, which are unhealthy and lead to hypertension and kidney disease and cancer. And so, in many ways, it's stacked against us. If you're poor, you kind of put in a location, you live in an area that's not as healthy, you have contaminants, pollutants from the air and from other sources, and you are likely to go to places like McDonald's and other places where they actually do serve good food. Most people don't eat it. I mean, McDonald's has vegetarian meals as well, but most people don't go there for that. So I also would like to add to the equation of exercise and diet, meditation, because love yourself, take care of yourself is a theme that I've emphasized. And I think an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And what you've addressed throughout this presentation is emphasizing the way to keep yourself from getting chronic diseases. And I think that listening to you and recognizing that avoiding it is where we should be. And so the dieting that you suggested, the exercising, the meditation, all those things are worthwhile. You didn't mention something that I think is an important thing, and then what we do all the time, and that is screening for protein. The earliest sign of kidney disease is proteinuria, and if you don't get if you're a person of color and you're over 40 years of age, and you haven't had a urine screen for protein, that's a problem, because that's the time to make the early diagnosis of stage 1 or stage 2 kidney disease. And that can be done if you find out you have protein in the urine and go to a nephrologist and let them do those things that Dr. Melanson mentioned that can prevent your kidney disease from progressing to stage 1 to stage 4 or 5.
Yeah, and I'm so happy you said that, Dr. Callender, because again, you've taught us well. That's part of our screening for early kidney disease. We're going to have a poster at the big transplant meeting, and that's what it's all about, right? It's catching people with early kidney disease. And the way to do that, the most sensitive way to do that is this very inexpensive test to look for protein in the urine. And, you will remember when we first started doing this, we would send patients to their doctors and we would tell them, look, we found protein in your urine. This is a problem. Go tell your doctor. And sometimes they would go and tell the doctor, and the doctor would say, "Oh, it's not a big deal." No, that's the wrong answer. I mean, that's early kidney disease. So again, you have to be advocates for yourself, and that's what good screening does. Is it arms you with more information. And now with the internet, I mean, you can really go to town with that. But it's important that you find this stuff early. And I love when you said the best way to deal with chronic disease is not get to chronic disease, right? Yeah, so the more proactive you are with your health, the less likely you are to develop a chronic disease. It's like what I tell my kids. I have 4 sons, and what I've told them is, from dealing with chronic disease my whole life, you need to do things to not develop chronic problems, right? The best way not to become a drug addict is don't do drugs. I mean, it's like simple, but again, we gotta continue to reinforce these things. All right, Dr. Callen, we got another question here. Was donating a kidney, does it affect your life expectancy?
Yes, I think it prolongs your life expectancy. I think one of the most important things you can do in life is to give. It isn't giving that you receive, it's in pardoning that you're pardoned. And so when we look at the psychology of donors, they have a longer lifespan because they have given, and they are our heroes. And as such, I think that most of the studies that have looked at donors, they find that they are healthier and they have a mental attitude that is far exceeds that of the normal person. And so my answer to that question is yes, donors have a likelihood of living longer than other people because they have given the gift of life to others, and they have demonstrated what love is all about.
Well, and the data backs you up, because that is absolutely true that donors live longer. They tend to be healthier, obviously, to be approved. But it's true. I think there's something different. I always tell people these are different in a good way. These are different people, and they are exceedingly happy that they have done this, even if it winds up with a problem. I recently did a transplant on a guy who almost 30 years ago donated a kidney to his father, and he wound up developing kidney disease because of something separate. I mean, he admits that he wasn't living the best life after he donated, but he kind of got back on the wagon, started to do things in a better fashion. But he did develop kidney disease, and once you donate a kidney, you go to the top of the list. So I transplanted him very quickly, but he definitely says the best thing he ever did in his life was donate his kidney to his father. And this is even someone that went to the point of developing kidney disease, which is very rare. I got another question here, Dr. Calendar, before we run out of time. Does having a horseshoe kidney increase your risk of kidney disease?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm sure both of us have had patients who we transplanted who had a horseshoe kidney, and it's not a normal kidney, so therefore you're more likely to develop complications. And so that yes, horseshoe requires you to be followed closely by your doctor to make sure if you develop problems that they treat it early and to avoid the necessity of transplantation. But the likelihood of developing complications as a consequence of having a horseshoe kidney is greater.
Okay. Yep, that is true. And now I want to ask you another question, because, and I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your point, because I know you've done studies on this. But I want to just talk about my experience. My experience is, from time to time, when I'm going to operate on someone, they and the family will ask to pray with me. And we'll do that. We'll pray before we go to the operating room. And it's funny, even among people on my team that I don't think are particularly religious or are religious at all, I think it kind of buoys the entire surgical team. But what I was going to say is, I believe, and I think my own data bears this out, that those patients do better. In your career, because I know you've made this a point to study, what have you found about people that pray and meditate as far as their health?
Well, that's an interesting question because it's one thing to carry the Bible around. It's another thing to actually meditate and believe what you carry around. And what I've observed in my career is that often the people who have the biggest Bibles aren't the ones that are as capable of having faith as some of the others. But those people who actually ask you to pray are a different group of people, because those people really believe. And I haven't had many people who asked me to pray for them. Of course, as a surgeon, whenever I got into any kind of complications or anything, I certainly prayed hard that God would be with me and guide my hands as I worked. But I haven't had many people who would ask me to pray for them. And I recognize in our environment, unless they ask you to pray for them, it's inappropriate to do so.
Right.
But I think that all of the studies, as you mentioned, have demonstrated for whether it's for chronic disease or cancer, those people who believe and actually practice their belief do better than others.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember, it being such a part of your program, and always was. I mean, this was always part of and parcel of this idea of healthfulness, was this idea of a meditation. And you're right. It's not about how well you know Bible verses. Rather, it is, what do you believe, right? I saw this thing on, actually I saw this on TikTok. I don't know if you've ever watched TikTok, Calendar, but you need to get into it. So I was watching this study, and I don't know if anybody in the audience saw it, but they were talking about water, and in the study, they had one group of people where, to a container of water, they said all these positive things to the water, and this other container of water, they said ugly things. They said horrible things to the water, right? And then they took the water and they froze the water, and then they looked at it under like a microscope, right? And the water that was frozen, that all these nice things were said to the water, the crystals were like beautiful, looked like snowflakes. And in the water that was, these ugly things were said to the water, it was like all these fractures. It was just ugly kind of. And so the point of the TikTok was that there's power in your words, right? And again, I haven't verified the research myself, but I do agree with the concept that the mindset that you go into, and the words that you speak can have consequences. Do you agree with that, Dr. Calvin?
Oh, I strongly. I think Vincent Peale was a long proponent of the power of positive thinking, and I think there's great power in being positive, and there's great negativity and associated with being negative.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we don't have Reverend Curry this week, so I just felt I had to, lift up that part of the discussion. But you and I, we are on the medicine side, but we understand the power of faith. It is,
yeah,
it is a powerful deal.
There's one other thing I would like to emphasize that you have actually mentioned, but I want to really emphasize it even more. I'm concerned that with cardiovascular disease, we are having more deaths from cardiovascular disease than ever. And one of the reason is because most patients who have hypertension don't even have blood pressure apparatuses. So they don't even measure their blood pressure. So if you're not measuring your blood pressure, how do you know that your blood pressure is being controlled? And if your blood pressure is not being controlled, then that's why cardiovascular mortality is getting higher in spite of us knowing how to treat hypertension. So the question out there, I have a question for you out there. Do you have a blood pressure apparatus so you can monitor and measure your own blood pressure?
It's a great point, Dr. Calendar. And again, we do this with our patients. It is so inexpensive today and easy to go to your local drugstore and buy a blood pressure apparatus. They're no more than $15 to $30, right? And you can buy one, and it's not the old fashioned where you have to use this sphygmomanometer. I mean, you just put it on your arm, you tighten it, and you press a button, right? And in my family, I've talked about this before, but high blood pressure is a thing. So my wife, one of my sons, because his blood pressure has been somewhat high, we all have blood pressure monitors. And then, of course, most famously, my mom, who has had cardiovascular disease, as you speak of. So that's a great point to leave on, Dr. Calendar, because it's inexpensive and it's life-saving. Everybody should have a blood pressure cuff. All right, well, that will wrap it up for us this week, and we will be back in 2 weeks. No, 1 month. In 4 weeks. That's right. In 4 weeks, we will be back with the next kidney talk, and I don't have the agenda for the next talk in front of me, but I will be there. Dr. Calendar will be there. Dr. Curry will be back, and we'll have another spirited discussion. So thanks to everyone out there in TV land, in computer land, and have a great evening. Bye bye.